welcome to Found in Translation, a weekly-ish exploration of one fellow's translation of the Christian scriptures, one big idea at a time. I'm Brandon Rhodes, and across the internet from me is the translator himself, Brandon Johnson. Hi, Brandon.
Hey, Brandon.
Wonderful to see you this fine, if foggy, afternoon.
Yeah, is it foggy where you are?
It is foggy where I am. There's a stagnant air warning.
We have the stagnant air warning too, but I can see blue behind the haze.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, you've got blue haze and I've just got white. So we are going to be talking about kind of the biggest passage in popular imagination among Americans of, if not all of the Hebrew and Christian scriptures, then at least the Christian ones. We're going to be talking about John 3:16. We're actually going to do 14 through 17. But yeah, this thing looms large. We all memorized it in one particular translation. We see it on T-shirts and bumper stickers, on big signs at baseball games. It's kind of everywhere. And part of how we think that the core of what you need to know to become a Christian is all in this one thing, right? It's also turned out to be a pretty convenient, compact space to see some of the ideas that we've already explored on this in this season so far, but also get a few new ones in and just see what a dense compacting of your translation shifts, what it's like to see them all packed into one or two verses here.
How they play off each other and all that. Yeah,
it'll also be a nice chance for everybody who's been listening through previous seasons where you might be more used to us going kind of chapter by chapter. We've been doing idea to idea this season. It's going to be a little bit of a mix up here for this episode, and I think it's for good reason. So we're going to have it up on the screen here in a minute. For those of you listening, I encourage you to swipe around to find the episode notes. We'll just paste these 4 verses or 3 verses right there in the episode notes. There'll also be a link to the translation's Google Doc, which is where you can also read any footnotes you want about all this. And I think it's also good to just read all of chapter 3 to get a bit of a context of, this isn't just Jesus breaking the fourth wall from the conversation he's having with Nicodemus. It's supposed to be happening within a conversation with a fella. So it's good, helpful to read it within that context. So yeah, go ahead and give it a read and we'll get it up on the screen. Hey everybody, welcome back. Brandon, would you please just give this a reading aloud from 14 through 17?
Yeah, absolutely. Just like Moses raised up the snake in the wilderness, it's necessary for the Son of Humanity to be raised up, so that everyone who trusts him will have age-long life. You see, this is how God loved the whole world. He gave the one-of-a-kind Son, so that everyone who places their trust in him would not be lost to death, but would have age-long life. God did not send the Son to the whole world in order to put the whole world on trial, but so the whole world would be liberated through him.
Word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Yeah, so the first word we need to acknowledge here is one you don't even have a footnote for, but it is, I think, pretty consequential. And partly it's, you didn't translate it that differently from what's regular, but it's worth acknowledging. It's the word cosmos, usually translated as the world.
Right.
Elsewhere. Right. Why is that worth explaining a little bit more here, that if you didn't translate it that differently?
Yeah, I think because there's different things that this one Greek word can mean, and different things that we have often meant in the church by world in English too. And so one of those things that I'm not coming up with out of nothing, it's in the giant lexicon that I have at my desk with me. It's in ways that people talk about it, is whole world. It's just talking about all the people everywhere, all of humanity, Right.
Yeah.
Um, and that's pretty clearly what it's getting at here. And the same thing, I think just adding whole at the front clarifies that pretty simply.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, the other more common of the different ways, we were just went over this before we started recording, and the dictionary here has like 25 entries or something for different definitions for this word.
Wow.
Yeah,
Like that's like almost as many as like Inuits have for snow. That's amazing.
yeah. Um, it ends up being like where we get the word for cosmetics, having to do with adornment and arranging yourself and military equipment and all these different things, like arranging troops in formation and all sorts of stuff. But um, the other one basically is this order, the world order, or the way I'm doing a world system, just kind of the way the world works. Uh,
Sure.
and that is often how it's used in this gospel, in other places, but here it's pretty clearly the all of humanity meaning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Why for you was it worth making that clear? Why is whole world better than world?
Just to really emphasize that, make sure there's no confusion, I think. Um, not leave any loopholes for exclusion, potentially, for people who are, like this is very clearly including everyone. Um,
We're very good human beings at finding loopholes. Yeah. Yeah.
we are. Um, yeah, and there's a difference between saying that everyone's like on track no matter what they live like. That's not what this is saying. This is saying the way that God showed love to the whole world.
Yes.
That the fact that God did show the same kind of love to everyone. It's not conditional on any distinctives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Not lineage, not ability, not money,
Not sexuality, not,
not so, yeah,
yeah, nothing.
name it.
Yeah.
Um, there are, yeah, that's great. Some of the other, I think, loopholes are to sort of contrast world, because one of the meanings of the word world here is just means material reality, the totality of reality, the
That's
the
one of the
str-
25.
that's
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And when I was in seminary and learned that, it was a revelation for me to have this intuition that like this is a religion that is earthier than the story as I was having it told to me really made room
Hmm.
for. Like the core story is you broke the rules, God did something violent so that you don't or and suffered something violent so you don't have to, so you can go to heaven when you die and escape this world that is going to burn.
Yeah. Although
It's a horrible
it's
story.
a bad story, and it's not what
It's
this word means.
and it's really
It's
it's
Yeah, it's like everything, everywhere,
all at
stars,
once.
sky, all the physical world. It's not in contrast to a spirit realm.
Yeah.
That's There is no contrast to it. There's the world, and then that's it,
Oh,
because it's
yeah.
everything.
It's
Yeah,
everything. Yeah. Like
yeah,
that
the
it includes
cosmos.
yeah,
Yeah,
if there is another dimension to reality that includes
it would be part
celestial
of
beings
this.
like angels,
Yeah,
demons, whatever, it includes that too. It's not just
right,
like um Newtonianly observable, yeah, stuff.
right.
Everything that has been created. Yeah. Um
Hmm.
what I liked about it was by emphasizing explicitly materiality. And that's included in everything.
Hmm.
um it's
Hmm.
not just meaning um I guess I was sort of hearing this story as like what comes later. God gave his son, so don't die, you get to live forever. Um, it was kind of making room for a bit of that, like, dualism, which is a
Hmm.
fancy word for this, like, a polarity.
Yeah, the opposite poles of material and
And
spiritual.
spiritual, yeah, yeah. Um, so emphasizing whole world doesn't suggest materiality, which is like, oh, I'm disappointed in Brandon's translation, but it does emphasize, but that's okay
Yeah,
because you're also
yeah.
emphasizing
It does
everybody.
sometimes get ground earth as opposed to the sky.
Yeah,
It can be used that way too,
yeah,
but not spiritual versus material. Yeah.
yeah. So the next one to talk about here is he gave the one of a kind son. What
Yeah.
You got rid of a word that nobody knows what the hell it means.
Right. Yeah,
Begotten,
the traditional only begotten is what I
only
have here as
begotten.
one of a
Yeah.
kind. Um, the NIV does a little bit better with it, I think, as one and only is how they handle it.
Hmm.
Um, but that's not really what it says either. It's not the saying that there's not any other sons, is not in the word anyway. It's saying that there's no other sons of that particular kind or group. The word begotten has a lot of different meanings. The Greek word there can mean conceived or born. It can mean came into being. It can mean generated, or it's the same word where we get like generation. So a group of people all born at the same time,
Yeah.
or a lineage, all people born from the same genealogy. Genealogy is that same root there. So it really does have to do with one of the meanings, anyway, that I think is the one that it's leaning on here, is that sense of being of a particular category, of a particular group. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a group of one, apparently.
Mm-hmm. And so you're getting rid of not just a word that means nothing to people, or like it's so
Right.
arcane and elusive. It's also become a religious technical term. Um,
Right.
so for those of
There's been
yeah,
like violence in church history of people fighting over the exact definition of what it means to be begotten for Jesus in Scripture.
I'm so glad that when we got strong
Yeah.
opinions about Greek words, we just started a podcast instead of like sharpened our swords.
Yeah.
Good lord.
Yeah. A lot of argument about things that really have to do much more with Greek philosophy than they do about a Hebraic scriptural worldview,
Sure.
and ends up making it way more complicated than it needs to be.
Yeah. 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 And it's not to say that those um, Hellenistic or Greek ideas, questions, or insights are like fundamentally bad. The complication and liability is
No.
when you're reading that stuff back in, not discovering um, clues that help you from a Hellenistic perspective in the text, but sort of reading it backwards into it.
Saying that these philosophical debates that we've had and decided that anyone who disagrees is a heretic who deserves to die or at least be excommunicated.
Yeah.
Um, that's what the scripture was originally saying, is whatever we've decided is the correct way. And it's like, nah, I don't think so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like we speculate all the time. We riff on like, oh, this makes me think of this, and this makes me think of this, and this kind of helps things to click together in this way, making connections with stuff that only 21st century Oregonian man could come up with, right?
Yeah.
And it's not bad. It's just like this is how we make sense of it and like can share our thoughts about it and apply it in our own context. But we absolutely should not be telling people from other places or other cultural experiences, or writing it down and demanding that all future generations see it the way that we do and only the way that we do.
Right. Right. So by getting rid of this religious technical term that has is also kind of dipped in blood
Hmm.
um, of Christians killed by other Christians, or at
Yeah.
least maimed.
Yeah. We
We're
spent way too much time in my seminary days talking about what this word means. It's just why? Why is that our focus when we're training pastors, people who are supposed to be taking care of the church, the people who
mm-hmm.
make up the church, and like that's how you're choosing to like spend your time, is telling them all the
Well,
arguments about what it means to be begotten.
yeah. Broadly, yeah, a lot of those Christological questions can be really consequential to what spiritual formation is, what our hope is for all of reality.
Yeah.
Like I'm reading a book on. I just finished it on theosis, the hope that we our redemption, our participation in the divine life, and like
Hmm.
the implications of all of that for like the possibility for God actually being fully in contact with reality. All that, like, that's a big deal. Like if you want an earthy spirituality, God has to be able to touch it.
Hmm.
And Christology arguments are the places where that gets borne out. Now, unfortunately, the kind of seminaries we went to and a lot of other seminaries, these Christology questions, how is was Jesus somehow, how do we speak of him somehow as both God and man or human?
Hmm.
Um, they get like collapsed into like shitty little slapping fights that help from almost 2000 years ago that reinforce how our tribe is right, or it's clicked into that story of, did Jesus check all the boxes so that the violence committed upon him did indeed free us from being tortured forever and frickin' ever?
Hmm.
Which is a
Didn't
shitty story and question.
Yeah, haven't people heard that violence is not the answer?
Right. Um so yeah, I am bored to tears by Christology questions framed in that way, but framed in the way to
Yeah.
insist upon the earthiness of this stuff. That's great. So here,
Yeah.
just to say, like, let's
Yeah.
just create distance from.
Right. Yeah, I think Christology that emphasizes the character of God, the character of Christ, that should be informing how we develop our own character, our own way of being in relationship with creation and the people around us. Those are important questions. Getting the right formula for the like a very pretending we're physicists and are determining the right formula to describe the nature of reality.
Right.
That's not at all important to me, and I don't think that's what this is getting at all.
Yeah, it's possible in church history, it's regularly seen that people feel very satisfied with, like, I threaded the needle, I solved the question of how Jesus was both divine and human. So they like solve the metaphysical riddle, but the flip side of that is not how was Jesus God? It's that means God is like Jesus. Like the real scandal is the
Right.
character of God, like the Christ likeness of God, not the divinity of Jesus. If you get divinity of Jesus,
Yeah.
it follows you get the other one. But somehow
Yeah.
we've conveniently figured out how to avoid that.
Right. Right.
Anyhow, let's move on. We're going to try making this a shorter episode. That was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I think where we're going next fits with that part of like the character
Yeah.
and
Go with it.
aligning
Go with it.
ourselves with the character. Like I think we're going to talk about places their trust versus believes in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, he gave the one of a kind son so that everyone who places their trust in him would not be lost to death, but would have age long life. Um, the places their trust in to me really does say like, what are we giving ourselves to as a way of being trusting that what Jesus is saying, what Jesus is modeling, what Jesus is doing in the world is worth putting our hope in, is worth trusting in, is worth dedicating our lives to emulating.
Yeah.
Um, that's what it's saying here, not the really weirdly evolved, like, I believe in Santa Claus, I believe in ghosts, I believe in God. It's just like
Yeah.
saying, this thing exists. End of statement.
Yeah. Who,
Like,
yeah, he gave his one of a kind son so that everyone who gives the minimal assertion of existence would not be tortured forever, but would live forever as a ghost. Oh my God, that is the most disappointing gospel.
yes, yes,
Yeah, like it's not a minimal assertion of existence or efficacy of death in a penal like worldview.
no,
No, it's yeah,
yeah,
it's attunement to the character and person of of Jesus.
right. And I think that's what believes in meant originally.
Totally.
Like, if you're gonna like go on a marathon, for instance, and I'm trying to encourage you and like show that I trust that you have what it takes to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish,
Mm-hmm.
I would tell you, Brandon, I believe in you, which doesn't mean I think you exist, right? That should be understood. That should be a given.
Brandon, I'm not a solipsist. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that's originally what believe in was supposed to mean in the English here too. But over time, culturally, our use of the word I believe in Jesus, I believe in God has come to mean I think God exists. And that's not what it's talking about here. There were no atheists in this time. That wasn't an argument that could have even been conceived of.
Nope.
No
Yeah.
one was going around trying to tell people that God didn't exist.
Yeah. Yeah. And the magic formula, like this idea of like a sinner's prayer or whatever that evangelicals are into because it's all about getting like closing the sale,
Mhm.
essentially, believe in further reduces um like the down payment that you need to make to actually walk out of the store with that purchase.
Right, right.
And
It
it's
takes
I
away
mean
any
it
cost.
is faith as small as a mustard seed, and like there's all this stuff that is like, yeah, the divine like is hanging out outside the bounds of what we think where she hangs out.
Yeah.
But
We're
this
not
idea that you
earning
need
belonging. That's not what we're talking
no,
about. Yeah.
no, it's yeah, you want to steer away from the pit and towards life abundant and shalom together.
Mhm.
Tune yourself and life to this Jesus character. That's what
Right.
it's about.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that gets to like this next one that we've got here on the list, age long life. Now we've done an episode of that already.
Right.
So the best thing to do is just listen to that episode. But what's the quick
Right.
touch on
Quick
this?
quick is that this is looking forward to like an anticipated age of reality that's coming, an age in history that's coming. Um, that is the new creation, the new Jerusalem, the great jubilee, the kingdom, uh, er, heaven on earth kind of
Yeah.
thing. The reign of God. That's where everything and everyone has gotten to where they place their trust in the way of Christ and are living that way, taking care of each other, showing love, emulating the way that God loves the whole world. Um, so that everyone is loved and exchanging love, and it's good. So there's the nutshell version. Rather than eternal life, I think of like a disembodied, like floating in the sky somewhere.
Going to heaven when you die. Yeah.
Right, and that's not what it's talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. And now usually the the verse that we focus on ends that we just do that verse, but we've got verse 17. God did not send the son to the whole world in order to put the whole world on trial, but so the whole world would be liberated through him. Now you've made two changes there.
Hmm.
What are they and why?
Yeah, instead of to judge the whole world, I put to put the whole world on trial. Um, and instead of so the world would be, or it will be saved, it'll be liberated.
Hmm.
Um, so judged is not incorrect. Like putting on trial is essentially the same thing, right? Um, But the way we use judged in a Bible context,
Yeah.
when we talk about judging, we think of like punishing. And that can be the result of making a judgment, but it's not the only result. So the results can be acquittal. It can be you're awarded the money of your in your lawsuit. Like I'm kind of talking like
Yeah.
present day terms, but those meanings are, looking it up in lexicon.
Hung
Similar meanings
jury.
are present
Yeah.
in the Greek too.
Yeah.
Um, so it can be the verdict, it can be the act of kind of evaluating, it can be all sorts of these things. But the sense of that it means punished is too narrow, too specific.
Mm-hmm.
And what it's actually saying is that going through this assessment process, looking through at the whole world, that's not the point of why God sent the Son, right? It does go on in verse 18 and say, like, the verdict has already been rendered. The the people loved the darkness, but so you send the light.
Yeah.
Like it's not a destruction kind of thing. Um, so that's the point: is to liberate, to rescue from darkness, to rescue
Mm-hmm.
from oppression, to rescue from things that lead away from the great jubilee, new creation, to more of the same, where we try to get our needs met by taking away the needs of others or harming others, instead of defining what the way to live is love.
Mm-hmm. So we're going from like judgment basically being code for damnation to
Being sent to hell, right?
being sent to hell, to it's being put on trial. Like he's gonna evaluate things, and but that's not the goal. It's actually liberation. The presence of God
Right, right.
is not, and it's also not, would be saved through him. That
Mm-hmm.
similar to like the shift from judged to put on trial. Technically almost the
Yeah,
same, but we're
yeah.
creating
Saved
some
is
space.
correct as a word, but in Bible contexts, we have learned to hear it in a very particular way. That's not what it's talking about.
Yeah, yeah. Jesus saves. Jesus saves you from hell. Jesus saves you from
Right.
the wrath
You
of
get
God.
saved
Like,
from hell and get to go to heaven instead. All of this
yeah.
happening after you die.
Mm-hmm.
But what this is saying is God came to make it be heaven on earth
Yeah. Yeah.
for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the sending of the Son was a, a pivotal part of that work.
Yeah. To end the world as we know it. The
Right.
conventions and structures that keep us dehumanizing one another and alienated and refusing to support one another.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that world is judged and found God damned,
Right.
and Jesus
And the way
liberates.
to,
And it's less about punishing that and more about like even being cast into the lake of fire at the end of Revelation. It's the world systems that are being thrown into the lake of fire
right. Yeah, not
because
people,
they're
the
forever
systems.
behind
Yeah.
us. They're forever behind us. The
Right.
future is one marked by mutuality and it's like a circle dance together,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
not like
Yeah.
making bricks for Pharaoh's damn pyramid.
Right. Right.
Yeah, that's the liberation of God in Jesus.
Mm-hmm. And justice doesn't mean punishment, it means making things right.
Bingo. Bingo. Yeah, when people say, well, God is both loving and just, we can say absolutely. What they mean God is both loving and um
Angry.
punitive,
Yeah. Yeah.
and believes in
Punitive.
redemptive
Yeah, that's a better word.
violence. Yeah,
Right.
if God isn't angry, God isn't paying attention.
Right.
But God is angry, and God's response is solidarity, love, and liberation,
Yes.
not just beating the shit out of people.
Right.
It's a bad story. We're trying to find a better one here.
Mhm.
Or I guess we're really discovering it and making it a little easier for one another and your kids to find that story of liberation. That's going to wrap it up for us this week. Thank you, as always, for joining us on this leg of the journey. The easiest way to support Found in Translation is to leave us a rating or review on whatever website or app you are enjoying this conversation on, hopefully enjoying. That makes it easier for more people to find the show, especially if you do that in Apple Podcasts. Second best way to support the show is to become a sponsor. You can do that for just $5 a month. And when you do that, you get comment access on the Translations Google Doc and the satisfaction that you're supporting exceptionally nerdy independent media. You can find the link to join the community in the episode notes. The music you're listening to is by Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com. Found in Translation was produced by Perry FM on unceded Chinook and Kalapuya land. Goodbye, Brandon.
Bye, Brandon.
Bye, everybody.